This is super fun because Sarah and I have been wanting to do something together over the last few weeks since, summer started. We've been thinking, what can we do jointly? And this is actually a really great opportunity to do something together, as you'll see that the togetherness is actually a theme of why we are together tonight. So as you saw, as we advertised on our flyers, that what we're going to be speaking about tonight is today is actually a very, very important date on the Jewish calendar. It is Rosh Chodesh. It is the beginning, the first day of the month of Av, 2 letters, A-V, Av, and it is actually the saddest month on the Jewish calendar. And I feel like there's a lot of talk always about this day. We hear about Tisha B'Av, which means the 9th of Av. And I know even for me, Jewish history can get confusing and cloudy, and I thought it would be a great opportunity tonight just to talk a little bit about what happened on these days, why do we commemorate these days, why are they the saddest days on the Jewish calendar, kind of go a little bit into the chronological order of time, as well as focus on how we commemorate them today. And it's quite incredible how this one date on the Jewish calendar, the 9th of Av, actually commemorates not just one event, but quite a few events in Jewish history, and all of them very sad, tragic times in our history, which we're going to be talking about. But before we actually get into all of those details, we thought we wanted to just get a little bit started with some of our themes here on our counter. So we're going to start with our first thing. We're going to start with the Sangria, and then we're going to get into the details just after that, because we thought it would be good to kind of give our Sangria some time to settle and to sit. It's always better when it just kind of marinates a little bit. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to go right into, we have quite a bit to talk about tonight. We have some beautiful videos as well that we're going to share. And as always, at the end, everyone is welcome to share some thoughts, but of course we'll leave that till the end, just so that, if anybody does have to go sooner, they can definitely do that. So I know Ashley posted the link to the chat, to the recipe cards. And are you on my phone? You are. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna responding to the chat. Said it's a little softer, so maybe just talk a little softer. Oh, you can't hear us? No, someone said it was a little softer. Are you not hearing us loudly? Do you hear us clearly? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so
I hear you loud and clear, very loud.
If you are going to be making the recipe with us, just post in the chat that you are. Oh, I saw some ingredients, I think, on Graciella's screen. Yeah, there you go. We got one. Okay, if you're joining us, just make a little notation on the bottom. Otherwise, you're just going to have to enjoy watching us make something yummy.
And maybe
it's nice just watching you.
Great. Next time we're going to do a dance.
Right now.
We haven't seen you so long.
It's always a good time to dance. Okay, so let's just get started, right? Let's go and look at this beautiful link Ashley made, jewishgardens.com/gardens cooking. How beautiful is that? Okay, so let's just start with our Sangria. Oh, thank you to my technical director here. Okay, so I'm taking, with Sangria, the key is always a glass pitcher, of course, because it's so beautiful. And I think you want to focus better on that. Yeah,
see, guys?
It's so beautiful that you want to be able to see it in the pitcher. Now, very important, as some of you noticed in the ingredient list, is that, you cut off my face. Oh, sorry. Is that it's actually non-alcoholic. And there's a very specific reason for why we are making non-alcoholic Sangria, and we are going to get to that in just a few minutes. So we're first going to get all of our ingredients together so that it starts just kind of sitting in our pitcher, and then we're gonna get to the details. So let's start with, where did my ingredients go? Okay. In the pitcher, we're gonna start with the lemon slices. So I've cut them up already. If you haven't, you can go ahead and do that right now. We have the lemon slices. We were not able to find lime, but that's a nice thing to add. And of course, with sangria, the fun thing is any fruits you can find, whatever you can put together will go. Your favorite fruits. I don't know if any of you have made it before, but I know I made it a few times for the shul, and I realized how easy it was and how much fun it was, and everybody loved it. And you wouldn't believe that the non-alcoholic was just as popular, if not even more popular, than the alcoholic. I always have the options, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. Everybody loved the alcoholic. And actually the non-alcoholic, I call in my house, we actually call it fruit punch. So everybody can enjoy it. All the kids can have it. So it's a no-brainer and a fun summer drink. So we're starting with the lemons. Lost my ingredients. Yeah, we have the lemons, we have the oranges. And you can really put in as much as you like. Now this is pretty cool. This recipe calls for cranberries. We found frozen cranberries with apples in it. So we thought that would actually be pretty nice, especially being that our cranberry juice is actually cran apple. So it's gonna be a kind of a cran apple drink.
Should have had a bigger pitcher.
Yeah. I'm gonna wash my hands.
Okay, I'll take over. We're gonna add some cranberry juice and the grape juice and the orange juice and the lemon juice. So here we go, all the juices together. Are we measuring?
We're not measuring.
We're just gonna do.
You can measure.
2 cups.
Since you're mostly just
2.
watching us.
There you go.
We're gonna just do it the way we like it.
2 cups
You know what I'm
of grape
saying?
juice. Oops, you're supposed to do 1 cup of orange juice.
Oh well.
And half a cup of lemon juice.
We're gonna pile on the grape juice because it is sangria after all.
Look how pretty. Is that a half a cup?
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
And then
Give it a nice mix.
wait.
No,
Carrie,
yet. First you have to refrigerate it. Until ready to use, the sparkling water gets added last but not least right before you drink it. So we're gonna give it a good stir, then we're gonna put it in the fridge. Then the Rebbitzin is gonna tell us a little more about the 9th of, and then we're gonna taste it.
This looks quite good, I have to say. I wish you were all here to say l'chaim with us, because you know grape juice is just as good for l'chaim. So this is awesome.
Lois, can you smell it? Yeah? Okay, good.
It feels like you're in our kitchen, Lois.
It's a little tart, though.
We did not add that much lemon juice. I was very careful. Oh, there we go. Now it tastes much better.
How much more is this? Okay.
Put it in the fridge meanwhile?
I don't think we need it in the fridge because it looks really pretty. That's what I think. Okay. So now we're gonna just let our, oh, I'm moving this because I'm thinking it's the camera. I'm so used to moving the, it's okay, it's fine. It's okay, we'll just leave it. Okay, so now that we're gonna let this sit, we are going to, first of all, I just wanna start with going over, just kind of quickly, the different events that took place on the 9th of Av. Because, as I said earlier, you know, Hanukkah, we commemorate our battle with the Greeks. It was the menorah. Purim has its holiday. Each holiday really has one specific thing that happened. But it's quite amazing how Tisha B'Av really is the hallmark date of when tragedies befell the Jewish people. And for those of you that were in my class last week, we spoke about the very, very first event that took place. And if you remember, when the Jewish people were in the land of Israel, when they were in the desert and they were headed towards the land of Israel, and these people who just saw miracles upon miracles upon miracles, who should not have had any doubt whatsoever of how God is going to take them into the promised land, they just saw the splitting of the sea, they saw the 10 plagues, they saw manna from heaven, all of a sudden are like, how are we going to enter the land of Israel? And they tell Moshe, we want to send spies. we want to see the best way to conquer the land. And what happens is, we know they send these spies, and the spies come back with a terrible report, scaring the people, telling them how scary this land is. There are giants, and how this is going to be very difficult for us to conquer, and then even harder to live in the land. And what happens, the Jewish people actually begin to cry, and they come to Moshe, and they're very, very upset. Why did you take us out of the land of Egypt? Did you bring us here to die? And they are beside themselves. And ultimately, as we said last week, God says, as the famous last words, you cry for no reason, I will give you something real to cry about. And of course, those are very cryptic words that we spoke about last week, as why God can say something like that, which we're not going to go into now. However, it does turn out that this day, the 9th of Av, that the Jewish people cried because of the spies, turned out that meant that through the years and through time, it was the absolute most tragic day for the Jewish people. So
the night that they went into the grave for Sangria.
They
were actually,
they
cried on the 9th of Av, but I'm pretty sure that every year thereafter, for the 40 years that they were in the desert, the 9th of Av was when they dug themselves a grave.
Because they thought they were going to die.
And they slept in it that night, and the next morning some woke up and some didn't, depending on who was destined to and who wasn't. So it was on that night that the punishment kind of continued for the duration of their stay in the desert.
So I didn't know that it was on the 9th of Av, but actually because of this sin, they were, because of the sin of the golden calf, they were told that this generation is not going to enter in the land of Israel. They were going to die out, and it was going to be the next generation was going to be their children. And so they knew that they were going to die.
This was kind of like the first of the concept of exile. This was like the first experience. Well, not really the first, because they just left Egypt, but this and the rest of the events
Egypt
that
was probably the epitome of
and then it
exile.
continues on the 9th of Av again and again. The next example that you're
so that's really interesting. I actually didn't know that the 9th of Av is when they dug graves for themselves, and that sounds pretty gruesome too, getting into a grave not knowing if you're coming out. Both temples, the first and the second temples, were destroyed. The first temple was built by King Solomon. It stood for 410 years, eventually destroyed by the Babylonians, which is then when the Purim story happens. For 70 years, they were under the Persian rule. That's when the whole story of King Ahasuerus and Queen Esther takes place. So for 70 years, they did not have the temple. They're under the Persians. Ultimately, there's a bit of a discussion of which king it was, if it was Darius, King Darius, or his son, that helped the Jewish people rebuild the temple, which they did, and it stood for another 420 years until it was ultimately destroyed by the Romans. Now, it's interesting that a lot of things happened the same with the first temple as with the second temple. There are actually some, there are different discussions as to, different rabbinic authorities as to those that say that it was only the first temple, it was both temples, that on the 17th day of Tammuz, as you know, that we had a fast day a few weeks ago, it was 3 weeks ago, begins this time, this era of the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks leading up to the 9th of Av. So the 17th of Tammuz, which is last month, is when they actually besieged the city of Jerusalem, and when no food was able to be brought in and out. And it actually didn't happen in a span of 3 weeks. It actually happened 30 months later, that on the 9th of Av, the temples were put ablaze and destroyed. But from the time of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Av, until the 9th of Av, was the time of the most acute suffering. The most suffering, because it was obviously like the closest to, the end of that period, where the famine was so bad, where the rape and torture and murder that was going on was, I mean, you know, we talk of the Holocaust that just happened, you know, to us, it's obviously the closest to our generation. But when you read about what went on during these days and the amount of millions upon millions of Jews that were killed, that were slaughtered, men, women, children, it didn't matter. And the most absolutely gruesome of treatment that they had, you realize why we still commemorate these days today and why they mean so much to us. And I do encourage you, if any of you watch horror movies, you can read the book of Eicha in English. I find it difficult to read, especially as a mother. It's very difficult to read, but you should know, just like we don't want to ever forget what happened in our recent history. We don't want to ever forget what happened in our little bit more distant history. Know what happened, because we were warned about that time. The prophets warned us that if we were not going to stop doing the things that we were doing, actually, just to get into a little bit more detail, there were the Jewish kings at the time strayed from keeping Judaism the way it was meant to be. They were actually brought a lot of idols, which is idolatry, which I find a hard time relating to idolatry. You think, oh, they served idols, and you're like, I can't think about idols today. How did they do something like that? I think in those days
that was their challenge, and every generation.
But you know,
challenge.
we do have our form of idolatry today as well. And I think that we all can think about what are the things that we idolize today that maybe are taking us to the wrong direction. Maybe we need to be focused more on our spiritual journey, and maybe we're straying from where we should really be going. But anyway, being that they were idolizing the wrong things, they were taken astray. The prophets, and actually the book of Eicha, as much as it's a history book, is actually a prophecy. It was actually said, I found that so fascinating, it was a prophecy that was said before it actually happened. It was said word for word. If you do not turn your direction, go back to the way you should be, go back to serving God the way you should be, this is what's going to happen. Starvation is going to be so bad. Murder is going to be so bad. This is what's going to happen. Of course, they didn't listen, and we know the end of the story. But as Sarah's going to carry on, as soon as I'm finished with this, Sarah will actually explain why it is so important for us to listen to that prophecy and what it means for us today. Just carrying on, it's actually the date that the Jews were expelled from England in 1290 CE. It is also the date they were banished from Spain. Interestingly, the edict of the Spanish Inquisition was signed on March 21st, I believe, 31st in 1942, and they were told they had 1492, and they were told they had exactly 3 months to leave, and by then they had to be out. They absolutely could not be in Spain. That date of 3 months later was the 9th of Av.
Some people say that there is a theory that Columbus was also Jewish, and they use the fact that he left actually on the 9th of Av was when he started his journey and discovered the Americas. And I was reading while we were researching how we always say that God prepares the
cure.
Thank you.
Cure
before the sickness. And as the Jews are being expelled from their homes, Columbus was on his way to discover a new home that was going to be open and welcoming for the Jews. So that actually, they say, also occurred on the 9th of Av when he left Spain. And they say, you can see on the dates of the letters, I don't know how much of it is actually proven, but that's one of the thoughts that's out there. So they were chased out of Spain on Tisha B'Av. They were expelled from England. The spies came back and were punished on the 9th of Av. Both temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av, and Hannah's going to repeat the last one that occurred on the 9th of Av as well.
So this is kind of interesting. World War II and the Holocaust, which World War II was really, as many historians will say, was a drawn out World War I, which ultimately brought about the Holocaust, began on Tisha B'Av in 1914, which was the day that Germany declared war on Russia, effectively beginning World War I, and then ultimately ending in the biggest, Jewish genocide in our time. So there are lots and lots of, I would say probably the biggest tragedies to ever befall the Jewish people fell on this day, and this is why we commemorate it very, very strictly now. So there are certain things that we keep just to kind of get into that feeling of mourning, to kind of get into that mode of just keeping in mind that these are not joyous times, these are serious times, that we should really behave that way and get into that zone. So number one, we do not drink wine, which is why we made a non-alcoholic sangria. We don't drink wine because wine is a symbol of joy, of happiness, of wealth. We don't want to be doing that now. The second thing is we actually don't eat meat during these 9 days because, again, meat is a symbol of joy. That's also that richness, that wealth, and we don't want to be celebrating in that time. So during these 9 days, we actually eat only dairy or fish, no meat, besides for Shabbos. Of course, on Shabbos, we can make a kiddush on wine, have chicken and meat, but otherwise during the week, we don't do any of that. Many people will not do laundry during these days because they feel that it's also a sign of taking care of yourself and comfort. Thank you. That's a good word. And
cutting our nails.
So cutting our nails, we really just don't do from Saturday night until Tisha B'Av. So it's not the entire 9 days, but from the Saturday night prior, we don't cut our hair. We obviously do not have any weddings with live music or any of that kind of thing, because those are all symbols of joy. But with the exception of a bris, of course, you can't control when a baby's going to be born. So if there's a bris, we celebrate the birth of a baby boy.
My nephew's actually having a bris this Monday. My sister-in-law in Florida had a baby boy, and they're going to celebrate the bris on Monday, even though it's during the 9 days. They'll also have some wine, even though during the 9 days you're not supposed to, because at a mitzvah, when you're celebrating that, you can.
A bris is a mitzvah, and you have the se'udas mitzvah, the meal of a mitzvah, and so we drink the wine then, and you can even have meat. A bar mitzvah is the same if there's a bar mitzvah. And if you finish a tractate of Talmud, if you finish something like a museum, you can celebrate with all those festivities. And like I said, Shabbos, of course, is the exception where you can have whatever you want. What's that? Yeah, okay. So now we are gonna move on to our summer salad, and then Sarah is gonna speak to us about how all of this is really practical to us today. Oh, should you just show that video first of the basic dish?
Maybe while you're putting stuff together first. Whichever, you can show it.
You say.
Whatever you want. Okay, Hannah has a video prepared that I'm going to share the screen on, which gives you a little glimpse onto the temple. Little details about the temples and some interesting facts. So there's two reasons why we're going to show it. First of all, because we're commemorating the destruction of the temples. The temples in our mind can be a lot of things, and it is always interesting and helpful to see in actuality how it may have looked, so we can kind of visualize it. And the second reason why we're going to look at a little bit of details about the actual temple is because it is something that we are supposed to focus on during this time period, is to learn about the laws of the temple, like what sacrifices they may have given during those times, the building of the temple, why we do that. I'm going to address as soon as the salad is done. But just so you know, there is a reason why we specifically learn about the temple during this time period, aside from the fact that it connects.
In addition, just one more thing, while you're watching this, I want you to keep this in mind, that in addition, this Shabbos, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, is actually called the Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos of vision, where it's called that way because it was when the prophet told his vision of what's going to be, but we are actually told that every single Jewish person on this Shabbos of Shabbos Chazon, on the Shabbos of vision, is actually given a vision of the temple. And even if we're not conscious enough to see it, we are told that our soul sees it. So I just want you to think about that meditation and watch this. And on Shabbos, I just want you to visualize what we're seeing here on the screen.
There's no sound yet, right? Yeah. You can give me a thumbs up if you guys can hear and see. Excellent. Okay. So
I'm about to show you the quickest and easiest way that anybody can make a steady income in the stock market.
From our
But first,
computer.
if you like being glued to your monitor, staring at charts all day long, working way too hard,
Hold on, guys.
Okay, we did it. Okay, first we're gonna just quickly put together this salad for those of you that have the ingredients there. Let's just look at the recipe. We have our arugula. Cabbage. The rabbi sent me a few footnotes. I lost it. I don't know where he sent them to now. Oh, in my text. He says the Jewish expulsion from Gaza was originally, actually remember this, was originally scheduled for Tisha B'Av in 2006 until the Israeli government realized that it was Tisha B'Av.
Wow.
And so they actually brought it earlier. And he says his brother's bris was Erev Tisha B'Av. I know his was around that time as well. Okay, we have arugula. We actually got the pre-cut purple cabbage, which always makes it easier. I find it pretty difficult to cut cabbage. Antonella once actually got me a really cool knife from Poland that cuts cabbage. That helps a lot. But in our mantra around here, I always like to say, you know, we eat with our eyes, so the more colorful, the better.
Don't get us wrong, we eat with our mouths too. Don't worry.
Well, it starts with our eyes, and then it moves to our mouths and our stomachs. Okay. Snap peas. We actually have a wonderful farm here where we grow a lot of our own vegetables, and we have snap peas in our farm. Okay, and then we are going to do the slices of peaches. Yes, we do have peach trees here, but these peaches did not come from the peach trees.
Okay. Oh, I thought the peaches were for the sangria.
Nope, these peaches are actually for the salad. And then I have some scallions that I'm going to just sprinkle. And then I have these sunflower seeds. Pumpkin seeds are also fabulous. They're called pepitas. They're really nice. Can you see? Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to add some feta cheese for good measure, especially because these days are known for their dairy. So we like to add a sprinkling of dairy into everything. You want to just pull out the dressing ingredients, and you could also put like some walnuts on here is really nice. The dressing that we're making, is actually quite a bit. You can use it for 2 salads. It's enough for 2 salads. You can pour it onto this salad, and then also on another salad. Another great idea. I wanted to prep it for you in advance to see, but didn't quite have enough time. But do it on a bed of arugula, some quinoa. Actually, we make a really delicious quinoa salad with feta. Quinoa, strawberries, walnuts, and the same curry dressing is very delicious. So Sarah is getting it started.
So far, I just did a half a cup of olive oil, a quarter of a cup of maple, 1 garlic clove. Frozen cubes are the easiest and the quickest for salad dressing. So you just punch in 1 garlic cube. I will give Hannah the honor of squeezing a fresh lemon for the dressing.
Well, the way I do it is if you do it standing up like this, then the seeds don't fall in. You catch them in your hands. So that's my lemon trick, even though it didn't quite work for me right now. I see the thing went right in. Okay, so that's lemon. You're doing the garlic?
I did it already.
Put in, okay, some salt and pepper and a teaspoon of curry.
And a teaspoon of mustard, salt and pepper, and some curry.
You do have the recipe, right? I mean, we're doing this a bit quickly, but you do have it in front of you, yes? For whoever does want to make it.
Should I get started while you do the finish dressing?
Did you do the curry?
No. Hannah's gonna put in the curry and the salt and the pepper, which will pretty much finish up the dressing. 200 drizzle on now. And I think I will get started on our last thought for the evening while she sprinkles it. I'm looking at some of your cameras, those of you that didn't turn it off at this hour. And I see Graciela is very busy walking around, but I think everyone else is cool with watching and listening. Is that good? Yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna give one, does anybody need another minute to finish up mixing and sprinkling? If yes, just put it in the chat or whatever, or turn off your mutes. Everybody good for us to continue?
Wait 1 second.
Okay. Graciela, you're gonna have to be our judge. So because it's just us and you'll have to tell us, tell everybody if it's really good. Actually, just say it's really good.
Oh, hi, Miriam. I didn't see you join us. Okay, so I just
Could you please tell me again for the dressing?
Oh,
yeah.
do you have a link, Graciela? It's in the chat. Do you see the link?
I'll read it out to you quickly. Open it up and just zip it out.
What do you mean?
Open it on your screen. A half a cup of olive oil, a quarter of a cup of maple syrup, a teaspoon of mustard, 1 garlic cube,
A quarter cup of maple syrup, you said? A fresh lemon?
Lemon, salt, pepper, and curry. If only we can make it as fast as we can say it, right?
Graciela, I could screenshot it and post it to the chat if you to the ladies chat.
Where's Graciela? Let's see her. Graciela, show us a picture of your stuff. Where'd you go?
Okay, so here's our salad, our sangria and our salad. I'm not going to put the who is?
Okay.
I'm not going to dress it right now. It's right here, the dressing. But I'd love to hear how it comes out in your house. Right now, what we'd like to talk about really is the practicality that Sarah's going to be speaking about right now. She's also going to just tell you about how we observe Tisha B'Av today so that you can know how to do that in your own homes during this time when we can't get together. I would like for you to just, by a showing of hands, can we see everybody or not?
Yes, if you unpin yourself.
Okay, unpin. If you could just raise your hand, I would like to just see how many of you know the story. Hang on a second. I'd like to see you all. Why is that working? I don't know.
Hold on, guys. We're not that tech savvy. Oh, right here.
Oh, there we go. Gallery view. Okay.
There we go.
Raise your hand if you know the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa.
I see Corey's hand. I don't see her face, but I see her hand. Cookie, Ashley. Okay.
Nope.
Hey, Tiki, you have visitors.
Okay, so you know what? We'll actually leave. So we're going to tell that story for anybody that would like to stay on afterwards, after Sarah finishes. We'll tell that story because it's a pretty important story to Tisha B'Av, but I don't want to share it right now for those that did hear it, and in case you did want to leave sooner, we'll leave that for the end. So you take over.
Okay, so first of all, on Tisha B'Av, when Tisha B'Av comes, it starts the evening before. It's one of the few fasts that starts that way.
26 hours.
It's 26 hours. We begin the fast by having an egg. Egg is commemorated at different times, different holidays, and in this case, what is specifically for sign of mourning? And so we have a hard-boiled egg, and we dip it in ashes, which we usually just like burn a napkin or something, make a little bit of ashy crumbs. We dip the egg inside the ashes.
We were considering to make that for our cooking show tonight, to do the egg with the ash, but we didn't
think it would go over very well.
We didn't think it would sound as beautiful as sangria and summer salad.
Yum!
And you eat this while you're sitting on a low chair, because part of 3/4 of the day of Tisha B'Av, we sit on lower chairs like mourners do. When you go to a Shiva home, you will notice that the mourners are sitting on low chairs. We do the same thing on Tisha B'Av because we are mourning the loss of something that's very dear to us. So we dip the eggs in ashes, We usually wash on bread and have a little bite of bread before that as well. And that is how we enter the fast. We also do not wear leather shoes on Tisha B'Av. We're kind of trying to gear away from things of ultra comfort, as Hannah was saying earlier. So we don't wear leather shoes. We don't smear our skins with oils and creams. We obviously don't eat or drink. We do not have relations on Tisha B'Av. I think those are, did I miss one? I think that's about it.
Bathing.
And no bathing or showering for that day. So those are the practical ways that we commemorate the day of Tisha B'Av, and we try to pass the time and keep ourselves busy and fast as best as we can. No music. So Leia just asked if there's no music. There is no music. There is actually no music according to most people for the duration of the 9 days. So the Tisha B'Av is kind of the end and strongest day of those 9 days. So whatever we didn't do during the 9 days holds as well on Tisha B'Av, in addition to a few more. So that's the answer to Leia of no music. Music generally puts us in a mood and a festive mood. And again, this is a time that we're kind of more introspective. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you is one thought on this day that kind of brings a whole silver lining, I suppose, to the concept of Tisha B'Av and the concept of the destruction of our temples. So first of all, it's this point that I'm going to bring across starts with an example. This example is perfectly for Hannah, but I'm going to pretend to be like her for right now. So example, it starts off, imagine you walk into a home and maybe you're checking out an apartment or something and it's completely under construction. So the walls are bare, the stuff is down, there's wood all everywhere, there's panels of stuff and there's things strewn all over. And you know, you walk in there, and again, this is her, because I wouldn't feel this way, but someone like Hannah would walk in there, and what would she see when she sees like bare walls and broken down things and hammers? Oh, you know what? A white couch would be like amazing right over there. Actually, I think a chandelier would be spectacular. Let's put in some more windows over here. And she would just come up with all, oh, hi, Schwiger.
I saw her.
There's her mom and my mother-in-law right there. She's making sure we're behaving. We are behaving.
I didn't want to interrupt Sarah, but I wanted to say, I hope the kitchen looks clean enough for you.
We'll clean up after, we promise. Okay, anyway, so Hannah would walk into such a situation, and what she would see in that situation is possibilities. All kinds of possibilities. That's what someone like Hannah would see when she walks into a construction zone, so to speak, even more so than if she walked into a beautiful mansion. Am I right? I'm right. Okay. Now, so the real thing that would draw someone to a scene of total destruction is the possibility of restructuring and construction and building something new and building something bigger. Now, back to the time that we're talking about is that the 3 weeks that we're discussing here, again, we're commemorating the destruction of our temples, 2 of them, right? So we're commemorating the destruction of the temples that occurred over the duration of these 3 weeks and culminated in the 9th of Tisha B'Av. And again, we don't have weddings. We actually don't either. We try not to buy new clothes and all kinds of other things that make us feel good.
Unless there's a really great sale, you're actually allowed to. Because if you're
really great sale,
if you're going to lose out on the sale,
9 days.
Yes, nope, you're allowed to.
Okay,
You made up that rule.
Hear it during the 9 days.
Leave it up to her. So, okay. Sometimes we try to refrain from indulging ourselves, whether that is shopping for you or eating a piece of meat or whatever it is. We try to kind of tone it down because we are attempting to really absorb what happened thousands of years ago. I mean, honestly, if we didn't have these restrictions, it would not even enter our minds for more than 5 minutes about a temple that was destroyed many years ago. So these little things that seem kind of small really kind of bring us back there and allow us to, in our modern day lives, which has so many other things going on, I'm looking at the screen instead of the
that's
camera,
why
right?
I'm moving.
It really allows us to integrate and absorb what occurred during that time. So it actually, we learn also, like I told you before you watched the videos, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe would encourage us to learn about the temple, to learn how the priests used to serve in the temple, all kinds of details like that, right? Now, the question we really have is like why? Okay, it's a beautiful building and it's a beautiful piece of history, but maybe we should learn something a little more practical for our days. Not only that, we don't even serve in the temple in our days, right? We pray we pray 3 times a day instead of sacrificing in the temple because it doesn't pertain to us right now. So why do you think it would be important for us to go back and learn the details of how to construct a temple and how to bring a sacrifice? But in fact, we are told that it is important for us during this time to do that. And there's actually the prophet Ezekiel, Yecheskel, who felt the same way as I just did and I just expressed to you. During the Babylonian exile, which was after the first temple was destroyed, Hashem went over to Yecheskel, Ezekiel, and said, tell the Jews about the second temple. Tell them about how it's going to look, how to build it. Tell them about the form of a second temple. And he turned to God and he said, why? What for? They're in exile now. It doesn't pertain to them. Why should I do that? And Hashem answered, just because they are in exile, should the next temple not be built? And what did Hashem mean by that? What Hashem really meant is, yes, you are in exile right now, but we do not need to be in exile mentality. We do not need to be completely bogged down and completely broken up and completely destroyed. We should be building towards the better future. And that is one of the reasons why we learn about the temple and we discuss it in all the details, because there is going to be another temple, because we want to have the mindset that it's going to get better. And we truly believe that. And there's actually a few practices of Tisha B'Av itself, which again, we said is the saddest day in Jewish history, which are not so sad. For example, there's specific pamphlets that the Jewish people say on Tisha B'Av. It's called the Book of Lamentations or Eicha. Most people print those in not disposable, but pamphlets. You won't really find them so many times in leather-bound books or hardcover books, because we kind of want them to be disposable. We don't really want it to be a long-term thing. There was one more thing that we were saying is positive about, actually the last sentence of this terrible, horrible book, not terrible, deeply upsetting and sad book that Hannah was describing earlier, the last sentence is talking about the future and telling us that we're going to get out of this and it's going to be better, and giving us hope and promise for a better future. So even within the darkest of darkness, there's hope for a better future. So what really was, and I'll give you another quick example and then I'll wrap it up. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was once on a trip to tour the overnight camp, a boys' overnight camp. It's called Gan Yisrael. It's where Hannah's son Shalom goes and Berka goes, and the boys usually go to. It's closed this year. And the Rebbe was going on a tour. And of course, the camp was perfectly prepared and everything looked spick and span. And as the Rebbe was going on a tour, they passed a storage room. The Rebbe asked them to open the door to the storage room. They opened the door and it was a mess. There was tables and chairs and graffiti all over.
That was their one room that they thought, before company comes, you store everything in the laundry room?
Or before guests come?
That's what I mean. That's what that room was. They were like, we're going to stuff everything into this one room.
So the rest of everything could look all nice and pretty. So they were really embarrassed when the door was open because it was really embarrassing. And so to cover up for the embarrassment, the gentleman told the Rebbe, it's a Zicher L'Chorban. We're commemorating the destruction. Sometimes we have commemorations of the destruction. At a wedding, we crack the glass. And there's
That's funny.
Very often in a home, when people build a new home, they'll leave one part of it undone. And they say that's in commemoration of the destruction of the temple. That's Zecher L'Chorban. It's to remember the destruction.
And what the Rebbe answered is, Zecher Mikdash. It's a commemoration for the future temple. Not just a commemoration for what was destroyed and what for what was destroyed and what's broken, but for what we're going to build and what is going to be fixed. And the reason why I chose this thought to say was because I feel it is so pertinent to the times we're living in right now. When you look around at the world and read the news, when you're brave enough to read the news, it is destruction, it is chaos, it is despair, it is difficult. It is very difficult to read the news because it just looks like a war zone, a construction zone. There's nails and hammers and messes galore. And it's very easy in a global level and in a personal level in our own darknesses that we may have to get kind of pulled into complete and utter darkness and to focus on the destruction. And the lesson we learned from a couple of things that I just mentioned is that we need to look at it as the step before the restructuring. I just made up the step before the rebuilding, the step before the light at the end of the tunnel. So when we look around this dark world full of despair and darkness, we shouldn't look at it like that. We should look at it as we are getting ready for a better world. We are preparing for a world that's going to be full of goodness. And how should we do that? And how can we do that? And when we all have that mindset, we will create a world like that. So before we taste our sangria, I want to bless all of us that this coming Tisha B'Av should not only be a day of mourning, but it should turn into a day of celebration when the world appreciates and reveals all the goodness that is within it. And we as a people can also express all of the goodness that is within us and around us. And together we'll make the world an awesome place. Thanks,
So
Corey.
just before that, what I love so much about the story that Sarah told, just a minute, I'm hearing some noise. I just want to.
I forgot the Rebbe Keep story. That's okay. Want the video?
Oh, it's a sensitive. Okay, fine. What I love so much about that story is that it is so indicative of what the Rebbe stood for and what Chabad is. The Rebbe came to a mess and sees scribbled on it, Zecher L'Chorban, and he wants to know why Zecher L'Chorban and not Zecher L'Mikdash? Why are we remembering destruction? We need to be focusing on the rebuilding. We're not focusing on destruction. And that's why maybe many of you are not even so familiar with the exact rules and the laws that we commemorate these days with, because they are not our focus. In Chabad, you will not find that we are so focused on don't listen to music and make sure that you're mourning properly. And because very often you will find in a lot of Jewish circles, this is how they spend a lot of their time, is how are we going to remember the destruction properly? That is not what Chabad is. In Chabad, we focus on how are we going to rebuild? How are we going to look ahead? You know, and there's always these discussions. You're allowed to listen to music, and what kind of music, and is it live music or not live music? You know what? Listen to the music. As long as you're, I'm looking into the wrong spot, so I was trying to distract me. We are not machmir, we are not strict on mourning. What we are strict on is celebration. We are strict in being joyful. Of course, you have to follow the guidelines. Guidelines were set for a reason. And we have to follow those. But at the same time, to us, the main day of the year is Simchat Torah. That's the real day. That's when we celebrate in our Judaism and we celebrate with the Torah. Tisha B'Av, it's important. We have to remember, but it's not the day of the calendar. And I think that story that Sarah told really, really epitomizes that concept really, really well. And I also wanted to just share one little anecdote of about 200 years ago, Napoleon was walking through the streets and he hears people wailing and crying and screaming in despair, and he thinks, what kind of pogrom must have happened to this town? And he's thinking, what is going on here? And he asks somebody, he says, what's going on? Why are these people crying and mourning like this? And this guy says, well, they're crying over the destruction of their temple. And he says, what temple? Who destroyed their temple? I didn't hear about this. And they say, no, this happened 1800 years ago, the destruction of their temple. And Napoleon was absolutely floored. And he couldn't believe it. And he looked at this person and he said, a people that can cry over the destruction of their temple 1800 years later will surely merit to see it rebuilt.
Amazing.
And to us, that's the focus. The focus is on, of course, we have to remember the destruction because we have to remember that we want to rebuild it. If we don't remember that it was destroyed, then we're not going to be on the right path to build it. But the focus has to be on the rebuilding, not on the fact, not on focusing on what we lost, but what we're going to get. So Sarah got 2 glasses here, ready for us to make l'chaim.
Graciela, your salad looks yum. Should we put the video on?
Yeah, we do have a beautiful video that we want to share with you, which depicts these days also so beautifully, and this idea. There's this beautiful story of Rabbi Akiva walking with his colleagues on the Temple Mount, and he sees these wild animals running across the Temple Mount like it's just like it's a jungle. And
it was a pile of destruction, the temple.
Well, just to continue what I was saying earlier, the different things that happened on the 9th day of Av. The 9th day is when the actual temple was put aflame. A year later, they actually bulldozed it. On the 9th day of Av, they actually razed it to the ground. So that's why we don't see it today. There's nothing there but in an exterior wall. So he was walking with his colleagues and he sees these wild animals walking past where the temple used to stand. And his colleague was crying and he was miserable. And Rabbi Akiva started to laugh. And the students were very confused at this mixed reaction. And they asked the colleague, why are you crying? And he said, because look what's going on here. Where our temple stood, we have wild animals running. So they said to Rabbi Akiva, well, then why are you laughing? And Rabbi Akiva said, in that same prophecy, remember we spoke about that prophecy that was told, in that same prophecy that said that the temple was going to be destroyed and that wild animals would roam this piece of land, that same prophecy said that one day it will be rebuilt. And one day, and one of the most beautiful lines in the book of Lamentations, as you know, one of my favorite lines, and I make labels sing it, it's so beautiful, is that one day the streets of Jerusalem will be filled with the sounds and the sights of little children, little boys and little girls laughing and playing in the streets. So he said, now I see that the first half of the prophecy came true. If the first half of the prophecy came true, it only stands to mean that the second half of the prophecy will come true as well. There's a beautiful song that we're going to play. Just before you play it, Sarah, I just want to welcome, there's actually, Nina Silverman is on here tonight. I think that her camera is off, but I want to welcome you, Nina. You're new to the community. We're glad that you're here with us. Thank you for joining. And maybe one day we'll get to see your face, not just your name on the screen, but we're glad that you're here. Okay, so we're going to play the.
I'm going to play the song, which again, it's called a cappella music. It's not actually live music for the reasons which we mentioned earlier, but it's a woman singer. She sings it really beautifully, and the words, the text is on the screen, so you can actually see the story within the song. And it really is essentially a message of hope. It's essentially, yes, there's the darkness, yes, there's the destruction, but the goodness will come, and we can be a part of that. So I'm going to put that on for you, so you can all see. No. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's that guy. Sorry, guys. You're going to have to look at him for 1 second. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Where a holy house once stood, a fox roams in its place. In ruins the mount forsaken, sacred stones disgraced. In pain this age's cry, as Uriah's words ring true, and echo through the night. Woe unto the Jews! Hakim Adol, you see, we're faced with tragedy, but still it seems that you deny, with laughter and with glee. No, my son, please answering, half the promise now fulfilled, and soon he will rebuild, only stronger, and the city streets will fill, and once more will children play, as prophecies unravel, and tomorrow starts today. So take comfort in these words, let the tears dry from your eyes, for one day we'll see our Mikdash, one day these walls will rise, and the city streets will fill. When the old remain forever young, and the tyrant's words shine as the sun, and the lion lays in peace aside the land. only stronger, and the city streets will fill. And once more will children play, as prophecies unravel, and tomorrow starts today. So take comfort in these words, let the tears dry from your eyes, for one day we'll see our Mikdash. One day these walls will rise. City streets where chayvas ha'ir yamalu, yeladim v'yeladas mischakim. Where chayvas ha'ir yamalu, yeladim v'yeladas mischakim. And the city streets will sing, and once more will children play, as prophecies unravel, and tomorrow starts today. So take comfort in these words, let the tears dry from your eyes, for one day we'll see our Mikdash. One day these walls will rise, and the city streets will fill, and once more will children play, as prophecies unravel, and tomorrow starts today. So take comfort in these words, let the tears dry from your eyes, for one day we'll see our Mikdash. One day these walls will rise, and the city streets will fill.
All right, there you go.
We just finished showing the video. So those words are actually engraved in the walls.
Okay, I told him to come.
And here, Jerusalem is waiting for these arms and legs to do some cartwheels and make some noise and share some laughter. They're pretty good at it. But it's actually very, very beautiful, engraved in the old city of Jerusalem. For those that have come with us on the Israel trip, we've always pointed it out. It has these words, and it actually is a park for children, and it's quite beautiful. Here, we actually had a taste of our sangria, which is quite delicious. We encourage you to give it a try.
Graciela, let's see yours. And the rest of you can lift your glasses of water. She didn't make the sangria, she made the salad.
Oh.
Right? Okay, so lift your cups of water, lemonade, tea, coffee, seltzer, and let's make a l'chaim to a brighter world and a time of joy.
To rebuilding.
Amen. That's a good one.
So we actually made a bracha before.
Yeah.
I actually tasted it before to see that it was very delicious.
You taste
But
it?
if we didn't make a bracha, I could say no.
Say a bracha.
Okay, so for those of you, should say this right back.
You say shehakol or hagafin?
You actually say hagafen. It has, because I actually did pour, if you saw, I did pour the majority was grape juice, even though it does have a lot of mixed things in it. So it's a good question. It's a good question. Obviously, the one with wine is pretty straightforward. Okay, I did want to share that story of Kamta Bar Kamta for anybody that did not hear it, because I did only see like a few hands when we told it.
Okay.
What? What? Oh. That's great. Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Oh, you're staying on to hear the story? Okay, great. Let's tell the story. Because it's really a classic. That's why I wasn't sure if I should take the time to say it, because I thought maybe a lot of you already heard it. But it is a classic, and I would hate for you to tell your friends that you were part of a 9 days class and didn't hear the story. So we're going to share our sangria. It's looking popular around here. Okay, so the story actually happened at the time, the end of the second temple. It was when just an interesting little side note is that the first temple was mostly ruled, we were mostly autonomous, we were independent. The second temple, we were mostly under outside rule. And a big part of it was Roman rule. At the end, we know that the Romans are the ones who destroyed the second temple, right? And what happened was that, it's actually, the story is told in the Talmud of a man who was throwing a party at his home, and he asked the mailman of those days, the messenger, to deliver an invitation to his friend Kamsa. Now the thing is that while Kamsa was a very good friend of his, Bar Kamsa was not. Bar Kamsa was on his blacklist, and he didn't want to see anything of Bar Kamsa. Now, this delivery man, inadvertently delivered the invitation to Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. Now, when Bar Kamsa sees this invitation, he is so touched, and he thinks, wow, this is this man's way of reconciling. He wants to make peace, and he's inviting me to the party. And he is so touched. And he decides he's going to the party. And sure enough, he shows up at the party, which was a very elaborate party. And he hosted all the important people in the town, and including lots of rabbis. And as soon as the host realizes the mistake and realizes that Bar Kamsa was invited instead of Kamsa, he is livid, he is beside himself, and he says, he goes over to this guy, Bar Kamsa, and he says, you are not invited, you get out of my home. And Bar Kamsa is really embarrassed, and he pleads with the host, and he says, I don't know about doing live TV shows, guys. Why? There's like a lot of stuff going on here.
Sorry, guys.
You have to just like stay focused. Sarah says I'm very good at tuning out. I'm very good at tuning out.
You've been doing very well.
Trying. I need those headsets like Graciela, and then I could tune out everybody.
Hannah, if you pull down the shades on the windows, we won't see the reflection of everybody walking in the kitchen.
You know, Angela, that's a good job for you. Okay, so, you know, when it's on this big screen, I only see 4 people here, so.
No.
Okay. So where are we? Oh, so Bar Kamsa says to the host, please don't embarrass me. Just let me stay. I will pay for my own portion as long as you don't embarrass me. Oh, yes. And the host says, no way, not happening, not a chance. And he starts to offer, he'll pay for half of the party. Just don't embarrass me. And no matter what he said, the host was not having it. He said, you get out of my house. And he eventually says, I will pay for the entire party. Just don't embarrass me. And unfortunately, the host was not in any mood for any compromise and had his guards pick him up and throw him on the street. This man was so, this is real life, guys. This is real life. See, we try to make it look like it's 2 of us in a clean kitchen. You know the real story. You know what I'm saying? You know really what's going on here. All right, who are we trying to kid? Anyway, this guy was.
Mom's laughing. Figure you're not allowed to laugh. Okay.
He was so upset. He wasn't just upset that the host threw him out and no matter what he tried, but he was upset that there were rabbis there who didn't stop him. There were people there that should have known better, that should have stopped it. If they didn't stop it, it means that they agreed, and he was going to take the entire Jewish people down with this guy. It wasn't just the host. It wasn't just the people at the party. This guy was so mad, he was taking everybody down with him. And he went to the Roman emperor at the time, Nero, and he said to him, the Jewish people are actually wanting to revolt against you. And he said, really? What are you talking about? I thought we were on good terms. And he said, oh no, you can test it out. Send an animal to sacrifice in their temple and you will see that it's going to be rejected because they do not like you. And sure enough, that's what he does. Nero sends an animal. And there was actually, there are very specific guidelines with the animals that can be sacrificed in the temple, and they needed to be perfect. The emperor did know this, that it needed to be perfect, and he did send a perfect animal. However, on the journey, while nobody else was looking, Bar Kamsa made a little tiny blemish on the animal. And of course, when this animal arrived in the temple with the blemish, it was refused. Not because it was from the Emperor Nero, but because it had a blemish. And as soon as the emperor got word that his animal was rejected, that was the beginning of the end. That's when he decided, that's when he was furious. All he knew, of course, was what he was told. His animal was rejected. The Jewish people were going to revolt. And of course, he was going to be the first one. And we know what happened, what followed. And this is why we're always taught that because of baseless hatred, the temple was destroyed. It will be because of baseless love that it will be rebuilt. And if there's one thing that Hasidus teaches us, that all the Chabad Rebbes have passed down, it's that every single human being has a soul of God in them, and that enough is a reason to love them. And we can always find reasons to disagree. We can always find reasons where we are not alike, because we are not alike. No two of us are the same. We all have our differences. We all have things that make us unique. But we have to remember that it's just that. It's things that make us unique, and they should not divide us. They should actually unite us. And that's why, just connecting to the beginning when I said how we had an opportunity to get together, it's exactly for this reason. Because while these days are days of mourning and days of thinking about what we've lost, the way to building and the way to getting back to where we want to be is by loving for no reason. Yes, no reason. And God knows.
He has no reason to love you, huh?
No reason to love you. But God knows that is exactly what's missing. I'm not going to talk for the world, but I'll talk for our country. That's what we're missing right now, is just a little bit of baseless love. Just saying a kind word to somebody for no reason. Even if they completely disagree with you, or even if they're voting for the candidate that you really don't like, you can still be friends. You can still say something nice to them, or even something nice about them. Like, even if you disagree with them, you can still say something kind about them. And to be honest, it sounds like something so small, but this is really the key to fixing, to healing our society and fixing our world as a whole, is really just accepting one another, loving one another for no reason, just because they are a piece of God. Sarah?
Well said.
Oh, Sarah's leaving it to me. So with that, we're going to leave you. We're going to bid you farewell. We're going to wish you a good night. It was so nice to see you all.